Friday. Man, I'm looking forward to the weekend. The sun is out. The weather has changed. Give me 1 second here. Should be catching up. I thought today we would, I don't have a lot of time for today's stream. I've got an appointment I've got to see to, but I thought today we'd take a little bit of time and talk about the off-grid moto. Here we go. Talk about motorcycles a little bit. Now, there's a lot of you in the comments that have been reaching out to me that have maybe you already own a dual sport motorcycle, or you've purchased one, or you're thinking about purchasing one. And a lot of questions have been coming in, so I thought, well, we'll just cover that today. And something that's kind of interesting, so what I've got here that we can kind of go over and talk about and give you some, get you up to speed on what some options are, is we've got a highly modified motorcycle that is purpose-built for rough use, purpose-built to be capable and mostly durable. A lot of guards, a lot of protection. Also, it's a cheater bike. That's the way I look at it, or I tell my friends. A cheater bike meaning that I was having a conversation with my friend Overton yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about getting older and compensating for old age. And when you ride with younger people, or you just harken back to the days when you were able to physically do more than you are now when you're in your 50s or 60s, the nice thing about being established and having a little bit extra money is that you can buy performance, or you can buy things that will allow you to cheat. And this bike is the epitome of that. It gives me an advantage. If I were to go out with guys that were half my age on factory or just stock bikes, I would have a tremendous advantage because of many different things. And it's not just any one thing that you can put your finger on that makes something really work well or something great. It's a whole bunch of little things that all come together to work well. So I thought we would do that, a little Q&A. I just finished up the CRF like 15 minutes ago. I got that all put together, got all that black plastic off and everything put right. What a nice little bike, really in good shape. I'm very particular, I didn't used to be, but I'm very particular now about having things put together properly. I used to think that I could make things better than the original. Now, I'm not saying that everything that comes from OEM, from Honda or Ford or General Motors is the best. Obviously not. There's things in the aftermarket that are far superior. However, just bolting things on, and what I find out is that people will just cut corners. There's little things that bother me. You cut corners by not using the right washer, and now your plastic pulls out. You cut corners here, you cut corners there, you affect performance. A lot of the things guys bolt on affects performance. One thing that I was looking into, and I know about this, is what a lot of guys will do is, especially if you're shorter, these bikes are pretty tall, and it's a little bit intimidating when you're learning, when you can't touch the ground. Guys like to be planted. I get that. When you get more advanced, you start raising it up a little bit or putting it back to where it was originally, because you want that extra suspension. And really, there's a lot that goes into the balancing of a bike, how well it is. If you start lowering things and changing things, it can really affect the performance. It affects the suspension and how well the front wheel tracks, and a lot of different things that will affect it negatively. So a particular issue that I'm dealing with, the CRF 250L, Mrs. W is going to ride this on her evening rides. I'm kind of setting this up for her. So she's not very tall. She's what, 5'5", 5'5 and a half, whatever. She can't touch the ground. A new rider, or inexperienced rider, not very excited to go, because this is scary. So I want to lower the machine. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can lower it by lowering the suspension, changing the geometry, the links, or extending, which drops the bike down. Basically, your swing arm is just sagging. Well, yeah, that works, and it definitely gets the bike down, but now your bike is raked up. And yeah, you can drop the triple clamps and start messing with the forks, but you're getting into a can of worms that you don't understand. I don't understand. The brilliant engineers at Honda have been making motorcycles for a long time. Is it the best setup? No, but it is a good setup, a good place to start. So putting things back the way they were originally, I think, is important. So for me, my decision, rather than lowering the suspension, in a situation like that, get a lower seat. That's an option. Most popular motorcycles now, you'll be able to get lower seats, and that will keep your factory one. You can ride that until you get confident, get more competent, and then when you feel better, you can put your original seat back on there if you want to. So a couple things. So what I want to do is I want to go over all or the important modifications that I've done on my 300 from the stock form. There isn't hardly anything left on this bike that I haven't changed or touched. Now I've been working on this. This is my masterpiece right here. I've been working on this bike for 7 years. Been riding it for 7 years. I have over 700 hours on it. I've driven it, ridden it to Canada from here twice on all back roads. So I've got a lot of time on it in a lot of different environments, and I've made a lot of mistakes. A lot of the things that I thought were going to be good were not good. I ended up taking them off. But I can tell you now, I have it after the 7 years, and I bought it new in 2017. I have it now where it's sweet as a nut. I mean, it's just absolutely nearly perfect for everything that I like to do. So we'll go over that, and then I'll talk about some of my favorite upgrades or some of the first things that I would do if you're getting a brand new bike. There's some some things that you must do. It's a hard pill to swallow, this aftermarket stuff, especially when you throw the cash down on a brand new bike. You know, it's a big expense. If you're going to buy something used, if you're going to be Japanese, you're going to be looking in the $5,000 to $6,000 range for something that's really a nice bike. If you're looking for something brand new for Japanese bikes, you know, you're going to get into anywhere from about 8,000 and it goes on up, you know, 8, 10, 12. So just as kind of a rule of thumb, it's hard to spend that type of money and then you realize that you've got to buy motocross boots or riding boots. You got to buy protection, maybe even knee braces. You got to buy chest protector, gloves, goggles, multiple goggles, helmet, backpack, hydration system, tools. You probably have to change the tires out. You know, you can see where it's a slippery slope. So when I'm showing you the modifications on Candy, what I named her, Candy here, it'll be overwhelming, but this took place over 7 years. But I will share with you what I would deem to be essential. What's going to be essential? Well, depending on the bike, it's going to be a couple different things, but one thing a guy's going to want to have is a skid plate. If you're going to ride this thing off-road at all, you're going to want that skid plate because that's going to protect the frame. You could destroy a brand new motorcycle if you damage the frame by lack of a skid plate. So skid plate's really important, as well as maybe extra fuel capacity. Yes, you can carry extra fuel, but it's difficult, it's hard, and it's kind of unsafe to carry extra fuel for long rides. The better way to go is to put an oversized tank on. And then another thing that's pretty important is the seat. Motocross bikes have really uncomfortable seats. That's fine if you're riding them in hard enduro or trail riding because you're not typically going to be on the seat, you'll be on the pegs. But if you're going to push this into a dual roll like I do, where you might be going and ripping fire roads or going somewhere on the weekend 3-4 hours away and you know you're doing some road miles, having a good seat is critical. It's really important. So I'll give you some options as well. After that, you know, it comes down to tires, you know, but tubes, you know, tire, that sort of thing, but you know, nothing that really is going to be necessary. You'll be able to ride and go. Skid plate is going to be a big one. Seat's a big one for me. I got a super chat from Mr. Sparky. Shout out to you, Sparky. Sparky writes, don't mean to intimidate you, Cody, but I'm an East Coast man. Well, I appreciate that. Now, we always are happy to have our East Coast men here, but like our women, we prefer them to be silent, right? Silent, but there. So shout out to East Coast man. We don't want you to condemn yourself with your East Coast ignorance, so it's best for you just to not say anything at all. Thank you, brother. Of course, I'm just kidding. We have a member message from Mr. S. Cooper. Welcome, S. Cooper. Good to see you back. He says, would be great to have a once-a-week counseling stream. We will need your deep insight regardless. Thanks for the great content. Proho community is growing. You know, Mr. Dr. Prepper brought that up yesterday, that he enjoyed, was it last week when we did we had a topic we went through and we talked about the clean and unclean health laws in the good book. And he enjoyed that. He asked me if that's something that we could do maybe once a week. whether that be our Friday stream right before the Sabbath or maybe even on the weekend. So I'm going to talk to Mrs. W about that, and maybe we'll consider that. I think what I've been thinking on that since I've heard that suggestion, and maybe what the best thing to do would be to do that on Friday. That's when we're preparing for the Sabbath, and we can have a topic. So if you have a particular topic, one thing that would help me and motivate me to do this was if there's a thorny issue, if there's a scriptural problem or an issue you have with Christianity, and again, I don't have all the answers. And if I don't know and it doesn't make sense to me, I'll always tell you. There are things that I read and that have read my entire life that I just can't quite get my head around, that at face value would even, I could even make the argument, and I make the argument in my ignorance, understanding that I probably don't see the whole picture. That's why I'm only seeing a portion of it, or I'm not mentally mature enough to understand the concept. That's not a hindrance to me. I'm not going to throw out Christianity. I'm not going to throw out the scriptures because I don't understand one particular verse or something is difficult to me, or I don't agree with it, maybe even that. I heard it said one time, when I eat my steak dinner, every once in a while I run into a bit of gristle or a piece of bone, or the same goes with fish. Do I throw my dinner out? No, I put it on the side. I put that bone on the side, I work around it, and then I look for the good bits, the bits of meat that are important to me that I can eat. Maybe I'll come back to that later. Maybe I'll have an insight when I'm older and more mature, but I don't disregard it, and I don't not trust the Almighty because I don't have a particular understanding of the context of a bit of Scripture. So what I would like from Proho, get with Overton, get with the middlemen, throw some topics out there, things that have troubled you, let me know what they are. I need a day or two to work on that, where I can go in. If I don't know it off the top of my head, I like to brush up, and then we can speak on that. And maybe Fridays are the day to do that, but let me know. You guys are driving the ship. This is, live streaming is relatively new for me. We're still kind of feeling out what we want to do, but ultimately, I think what the most important thing is, more than the context or what we're doing, is just having a stable stream that's here every day that you guys can come and check in. Just to know that you have like-minded folks here, that we have a support system the best that we can bounce ideas on one another and support one another. And remember, the good book tells us whenever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, and I will officially say that today, we are gathering here in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Whenever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, then I am there also, that He's in the midst with us here. And there's a special blessing and understanding and insight that comes to Proho when you go forward in a group like this and you acknowledge this. Words mean things and words have power. We have a comment from our super chat from Mr. Dr. Prepper, Speak of the Devil, who writes, did you see the news story about 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate going missing from a train in California? No, I didn't see it. To be honest, I don't watch the news anymore, nor do I care. I've understood that we are actually involved in a war right now. Now, who the enemy is, it's hard to say. Is it foreign actors? Is it our own country? I'd give you 50-50 on that. It's hard to say. Who's involved in these terrorist attacks? Who's involved in these shootings? Is it bad guys? Is it our own people? Is it folks using these situations to push policy or to manipulate us? Probably all of the above. So how it works, what I've been seeing and how the government seems to work is they use the false flag. So if they want to push a particular type of legislation, or they want to steal rights away from us or trample on the Constitution, they will cause a scene, a diversion, an explosion, a shooting, what have you. Or if they don't cause it, they're at least complicit in it because they are enabling people or encouraging people to do it because they want to be able to use that to push their policy. And that's the way it is. So when I see these things where nitrogen, potential chemicals that could be used in a nefarious way have gone missing, I believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. That's what we're going to go forward with this year and forever from now on. anything that you hear on the news or media is not to be trusted from any source, even if you see it with your own eyes. One thing we've been given a lot of warnings, beloved, about what to look for in the end days. And one thing that came up a lot at the end of Christ's ministry that he really had on his heart was, do not be deceived, warning us about being not to be deceived. He says, at the last book of the Bible, he says, at the end times, the deception is going to be so real and so powerful that if I didn't intervene, if I didn't come and step in and cut time short, that even my elect would be deceived by the lies and the deceits of the adversary. That's really a dire warning, isn't it? That's even my elect. Who are the elect? Well, that's the people that God has set aside, the people that are saved through Jesus Christ, the people that God has sealed to be in the kingdom with him. They're his most devout. His family, the church, the army of God, whatever you want to call it. Even they, the ones that are rooted and resolute in the faith, resolute in the foundation of God, even they will be deceived in these end times. So we're on good authority here. Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. Christ goes on to tell us, I'll tell you the truth, at the end times there's going to be people that will say that they're from me. It could be prophets. There may even be apparitions, fallen angels, or who knows what they are. But things in the spirit realm that will actually manifest and it'll appear to us and maybe even speak to us and claim to be sent from God with a message. But what God tells us is when you hear this, do not listen, do not follow it. Test what they say according to my word. That's why God has preserved the 66. He's preserved the 66 so that his children in the end days will not be deceived. That's us. So do not be deceived. So we'll even see things that could be in the sky, whether they fake an alien invasion, who knows? There's a lot of speculations out there, but something is going to happen. There's going to be a great show that's going to just shock a lot of people. And many people will be lost because they'll chase this, they'll follow it, but it is not from God. It's very interesting. So I don't know, Dr. Prepper. Don't know, don't care. I have no control over it. I can't do anything about it. They're going to do what they're going to do. We have a super chat from our friend, Fordor. Good to see you back, Fordor. Haven't seen you for a couple days. Fordor writes, I hear you on Suzuki. They don't give me the fizz either. It's true. That's why my DRZ is actually a Kawasaki KLR 400 SR. It's actually just a green DRZ. Yeah, that's you do what you have to do. You do what you have to do. But no, I could get into it. I just haven't got into the culture. Motorcycles are just like, how we are about our vehicles. You're a Ford man, you're a Mopar man, you're a Chevy man, whatever it may be. It could be because your dad was or your granddad. I'm a Ford man, right? I've always owned them. My dad always owned them. My granddad was a Ford mechanic his whole life. He only drove Fords, only worked on Fords. My family had one of the first dealerships in Oklahoma. So we've got that lineage, So does it make any sense? Not necessarily. It's just you like what you like. We like to root for a side or root for a team. And I just never have owned a Suzuki and never got into it. Would I ride a GSXR? You better believe I would. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. No, there's nothing wrong. Actually, the DRZ, I think that the top two if you are a full-size man with experience on a motorcycle, again, I'm not saying that a beginner can't get on these bikes, but I'm just saying that for me, if I was looking at two true dual sport motorcycles for myself, would I be happy with the 250L? I'd probably be happy with it, probably be fine, but I'd be happier with the 650 XR, the Honda. So if I were going to choose two bikes, my top two for dual sport, which was a true 50-50, 50 road, 50 dirt, my number one choice would be a new XR 650L Honda. My second choice would probably be the DRZ 400. To be honest with you. That's a good bike. Now, you don't have any reason to be ashamed, Sparky. You have a great machine there. Unfortunately, it has a 5-speed gearbox, but you can't have everything. Everything is about compromise, man. Everything. We have a comment from Mr. Ryan Warren. Shout out to you, Ryan. Ryan writes, bought the radio kit last night, priced it out, and found it's a good deal. For those who don't have $500 for the kit, Evans sells single radios for $130. Yeah, it really is. You know, I was sharing it with Mrs. W, the Proho radio kit that we debuted yesterday, and that whole kit is a $500 kit. And I said, you know, I think those radios are about $130, $140 a piece. So that's almost $400, you know, right there for just the 3 radios. So the extra $100, you know, what are you getting? You're getting the USA made kit. You're getting the USA made, all the nylon. You're getting the one-off Proho badge or patch, the antennas, you know, all this stuff. There's a lot of good stuff there. It's a fair price. It's a fair price. I had nothing to do with that. I told Evan, I said, I want you to make I'll tell you exactly what it is, what we're making on it. I told Evan, what you're doing and the fact that you've designed this and put all this together, you know, him and Overton and a few others that I don't want to leave anyone out, you know, they put a lot of work into this. And I told him, you know, you should make a little bit of money on it. And I'll tell you, just to be completely candid, he's making about 30% profit on that, and 10% goes to me. And my 10% is going, my 10% that I make, I'm not keeping that. I'm rolling that back around. I'm buying radio kits and giving them to people that we're helping. So this isn't about making a bunch of profit. So if you hear that expensive price tag, you know, that's not what we're about here. If you want quality, it's going to cost money. If you want USA made, it's going to cost money. And, you know, these bags and the radio pouch that I shared with you, those are made by real people, and with real sewing machines in the U.S. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud to be able to offer this to you. I feel very good about it. Thank you, Ryan. Man, you're going to like those radios. Everyone, I'm assure you guys, when you get those, you're going to have the fizz. That whole kit is really nice, really nice. We have a super chat from Xavier Goslin. Shout out to you, brother, who says, hi Cody, have you received my email about my dad communication tower? I did. I saw the pictures. That was impressive. Very impressive. Sorry, I haven't responded yet. I try to get to that this weekend. I did see that. Xavier rides a 2022 YZ450F. Excellent bike. Great choice. Brand new machine, man. Shout out to you. Must be nice. I don't have a 2022. Must be nice. Mr. Mason. Good to see Mr. Mason here. Shout out to you, brother. Mr. Mason writes that he's 5'6" and 165 pounds. So average, you know, it's about average for across the country. He says, I have a Husky TC125, but it's not street legal and geared for racing. I'm a Husky guy. I'm wondering if I go with the TE150 or the TE300, is the 300 too much bike for a guy my size? It's not. No, and that's what I have. This is, I think, one of the greatest motorcycles ever made right here. The TE300. Husqvarna invented motorcycles, from what I understand, back in the day. And they have a long lineage of racing and quite a following. I'm partial to it as well. My wife is half Swedish, and I like the Swedish connection. Now, of course, they're not made in Sweden anymore. When Husqvarna fell on hard times, KTM bought them and continued the heritage, continued the line. So there may be some confusion here. So when you hear of KTM, KTM is an Austrian company, and they have 3 brands: KTM, Husqvarna, and I believe it's Gas. They recently bought Gas. So what those bikes share a lot of similarities: frames, suspension, engine, transmission, lot of things. However, they've given kind of a free rein to the individual companies to kind of customize things according to the way they like to do it. And there is a very distinct difference between those bikes. Now, someone who owns multiples of them, I own, you know, of Huskies and KTMs, I can tell you that they ride and feel very different because of those subtleties. Husqvarnas are going to have linkage suspension for the rear shock. That's going to be better for high speed. They're also going to have a composite subframe. They're going to have a different variation of forks and things. To boil it down to you, just as just kind of a general rule, of the 3 bikes, if you're looking at them, if you want to go Austrian, and I believe that if you want the best, I would say that Honda and KTM are going to be your two best, or Husky, Husqvarna. How I understand KTM looks at it is Husqvarna is their premium line, KTM in the middle, and then Gas a little bit more affordable. Not quite all the bells and whistles and such. As far as feel for the rider, a KTM, how I would describe it to you, a KTM, if we're just talking about an XCW, a 300 two-stroke, and a TE 300, a two-stroke Husqvarna, side by side when you're riding them, how it feels to me is a Husky, you sit in the bike. You sit down into it. It's very, very much like almost like a cockpit, where a KTM, you sit on top of it. You know, that really sums it up, and it comes down to color. Do you like orange or do you like white? They're both fine machines, excellent in every way. The TE, oh goodness, I lost my chat here. The TE is a good combination for Pro because it has a broad or a wide range transmission. If you try to take a track bike, KTM, Husky, and try to turn that into a dual sport, like I've turned Candy into here, or the ability, I go back and forth, you know, so I change wheel sets and different things. You're going to really struggle with that because you'll never have that top end speed because that transmission, the gears are really short for the track. So what you want to look for if you're looking for a good end of time apocalyptic dual sport bike, you want something with that wide transmission. And the TE is perfect for that. One super awesome thing about the TE that I enjoy is I run two sets of gearing and two different wheel sets. I have my road wheels that I put on when the snow is still in the mountains and I'm not able to, I gotta get my chat back up here. Hold on a second. I don't know what I did with it here. I'm a bit of a Luddite, gentlemen. I apologize here. I don't know where my chat is. It just is gone. All right, let's start over here. Close it out. There we go. Okay, back. So let's get into, I talked too much. Let's get into the bike. Love the shop setup in the last video. Well, thank you, Jamie. I sure do appreciate that. Yeah, it changes everything to have. You don't have to have a fancy shop, gentlemen. If you're just relegated to all you have is a bay or garage or a single garage, or you're in an apartment and you've got just a little parking unit, same thing applies. Just be efficient with your space. Take a moment and have everything organized. Think about what you're doing and how my workflow is I look at the job at hand, and then do I have what I need to do the job? If the answer is yes, then get the things out. So get your tools out, get your fasteners, any chemicals, supplies, anything you're gonna need. Have them all out, have a nice, clean, organized workspace with a good bench, good vise, good light, and it just makes everything so much nicer. If you're struggling and dropping things and the frustration builds and you can't find stuff, it's beyond aggravating. And it makes a job that could normally be an enjoyable job into a drudgery. Thank you, Jamie. Mr. Sparky, we have a super chat, writes, a 1980 RM100 is a 6-speed, just like the RM125. I'm not riding any 1980s. I'm not riding anything older than 10 years old. It's been, how many guys has it been through? I mean, now, if I owned it from brand new and no one else had mucked it up and messed it all up and abused it and put a bunch of garbage on that doesn't work, that's a different thing. Then that would be cool. Or if you are really mechanical and you can go back and put the thing right like it originally was, I don't have any issue with that. I think that's super cool. The coolest, actually. But I'm not buying that old junk, man. 1980? That's almost 50 years old. Goodness. No, things have moved on from here. There are better machines. We're not talking about things that are that expensive. I heard from a guy yesterday that bought the same bike right here. It was a 2015 or 16, three years older, I think, for $3,200. You know, yeah, $3,200. That's not something to sniff at. That's a lot of money, but it's not unattainable. It's not unattainable. Mr. Mason, Mr. Mason's been with us for 3 months. Shout out to you, who writes, typo, I'm 5'9", not 5'6", if that matters, on a TE 150 versus a TE 300. Yeah, the TE 150 and the TE 300 are two different animals. Actually, so I have ridden extensively both the 250 and the 300. Some guys, they get intimidated by the ferociousness of the 300s. The power band is totally manageable and can be greatly adjusted with the power valve, which I'll show you here in a minute. And the green spring. When I started, I was intimidated by it. Started with the green spring, and then now I'm in the red spring, and now I want more power. You know, there's never enough power anymore. So what I have found with it, the guys that were a little bit spooked with the big 300s, they would buy the 250s. And it was worse. It was worse because it didn't have that low-end grunt. Didn't have that grunt, that torque on the bottom end. You always have to ride it up high in the pipe. As you know, like with the TE 150. I mean, that's a handful. If you can manage and ride in a difficult, like hard enduro type of environment or race environment, if you can ride that 150, that screaming Banshee, you're going to be really happy with the 300. You're going to have all that power on the top end. You're going to have all that grunt on the bottom end. And weight-wise, they're not very much difference. The TE is perfect because you got a wide ratio transmission. And what's cool about the TE and what they've always had with the TE model is that first low gear. That almost like a granny low gear, which will save your bacon in so many situations. Why that's perfect for me is I run, as I said, 2 wheel sets. So my gearing for my road wheels, I have a 21 up front and a 19 in the back. Now I have those wheels because that's what came on my 450 KTM that I converted into my snow bike. You know, when you convert a snow bike, you don't need wheels anymore, so I had an extra set laying around. So I dedicated those as my road wheels. I run Michelin tires. Michelin are my favorite. I run a harder tire. Michelin Starcross on the front. Michelin Starcross on the rear, medium. 21 up front and 19 in the back. Now I also changed the gearing. Okay, let's just get into it. We have a lot to cover. There's a lot to this bike here. I'm going to pull you off the mothership. And we can get up and personal here. Okay, 2018 TE300, that is my pride and joy, that I have, there's nothing on here I haven't touched. Nothing on here that isn't altered or customized for my personal liking. And the reason why I put so much TLC into this machine is it's, in my opinion, the high watermark of the two-strokes. It's the last carbureted bike. They went fuel injected after this. Fuel injected, I'm not a fan. The fuel consumption guys are getting on 2022s and 2023s is 60 miles out of a gallon. I can get 120. Double the range. Also, in the new bikes, we've lost the Kickstarter. You can't put that on new bikes anymore. So you only have the electric start. Well, that's a problem for me. When you're operating in extreme environments, you want to have both. If your battery goes dead, and I've had it happen many times, many times I've had to kickstart, you can't do that. And when you run auto clutches, like I do, the CX, then you can't bump start it. Well, you can, but you have to lock up it's a workaround, but most guys are not going to be able to do it. So this is the road configuration. This is how I have it set up in the spring before we get into the trails, up into the hard enduro stuff. I'm ripping fire roads. I'm staying down below the snow level. So I've got a hard compound tire, 19, and a 21, medium. Not hard, medium. Also, my gearing is completely different. When I'm doing hard off-road, my gearing up front, I'm going to run a 12 sprocket. Now I'm running a 14. You know, my top speed is greatly increased. In my off-road wheels, I'm going to run a 52 rear sprocket. I'm running a 48 in here. Why that combination? I chose that combination because I don't have to change my chain. I can run both wheel sets with the same chain. I don't have to break the chain. So that's kind of the concept there. Also, I'm going to have a very minimalistic skid plate because all I'm protecting the frame from is just rock, just rocks kicking up from the tires. I'm not smashing it on difficult hard enduro. When I rig this up for hard enduro, middle of summer, then I'm going to go, I'll go on with a full-on skid plate, like a hide, right here. It's going to cover all that stuff. I'll put that on and protect all of that. Should we just start at the front? Man, there is so much to cover. Tires, we covered that. Factory wheels. Balance your front tire, at least, if you're going to be riding on the road. I balance both, and that's what these brass weights are. You can balance this yourself. I'm going to do a video. I'll show you how to do it. You don't need any special tools. You need a vise, a bolt, or a piece of metal rod that will you slide the wheel on, and I'll show you how to balance perfectly. That makes a tremendous difference. The vibration that comes from the rim lock, and if you run tubeless like I do, is horrible, horrible. So this is a tubeless system as well. So I can run low pressure on these. I can run anywhere from 0 pressure up to whatever the top of whatever it's rated. That's going to give me a lot better traction. It's a tremendous advantage. This right here alone, the tubeless system, is one of the biggest advantages a van can have. I've also like up to be really, really tough, meaning if it falls over, it gets on a rock, it's unlikely to damage as many things as possible. I'm always concerned about that. Forks. I have custom suspension here for me, all the valving done. So I've got a lot of money invested in these forks, and I want to protect them. So rather than just having the small guards that come with the bike that only cover the front here from rock debris, I have full wraps. You know, these have like 40% more coverage than a regular one does. Also, I've got ABS fork guards, and I apologize for being dirty. I just brought it back from a ride. I don't usually keep it like this. ABS fork guards to protect from impact on here. Axle puller. I changed the wheels a lot. That just speeds things up. Makes it a lot quicker to get the axle out because I take axles off a lot. After 700 hours, I had to, the brakes were pretty much shot, master cylinders and the calipers. KTM brakes, Brembos come on KTMs. Magura comes on Husqvarnas. Brembo brakes are better. So when I replaced the brakes this spring, I went with KTM brakes. Less money, better brakes. Factory disc, titanium bolts. Whatever I can. I think this has a titanium axle in it as well. Replacing it with lightweight. When you have unsprung weight, sprung weight, whatever they call it, anything that's moving in suspension, if you can make it light, it makes a big difference. When I put KTM brakes on here, as a side, just as a little nod to KTM, this is kind of cool. I put a KTM master cylinder cover on there, just to acknowledge that those are KTM brakes. Oh man, I could go on for days about what's going on with this bike. Hand guards. If you're going to be riding in the trees or in the woods, you got to have hand guards. Hand guards are going to protect your hands from impact. You run into a tree, sticks, very, very important to have hand guards. Now, there's some guys don't like them. You'll break your wrist with hand guards. If you fly over the handlebars and your hands are locked in here, it'll snap your wrists. But it's all about, you have to make decisions. The best hand guards are Pro-Bends. Pro-Bend Cycras, very, very tough. Because of the abuse that this bike takes, normal hand guards are not tough enough, and so I have a Cycra reinforced aluminum bar across here. So what this does is that the bars are threaded, so these actually don't have those silly inserts in there. These are actually threaded in, and then this is all tied in together with this crossbar to the other side. Super, super strong. So think about that. Headlight, also a nice option of the TE. Why I like the TEs? Because it comes with a headlight and it comes with a tail light. That's a factory one there. Now I have a better headlight on there, but I'm not happy with it. I kept breaking it every time I crashed, so I'm warranting it, so I'm replacing. I got the factory one back on there, but I will be putting, I'll show you. I'll put a different one on there. Controls, I'm gonna roll this up here, get a little bit more light. One thing that you may have noticed, I don't have a foot brake. Normally, all motorcycles are going to have a foot brake on the right-hand side, just like the old Honda here. Right. Rear brake's on the foot, front brake up here. That's the way all motorcycles are, unless they're British and then they're switched. How come I don't have a foot brake? Well, I like a handbrake for the rear brake better. I come from mountain biking, kind of that mountain biking. I used to race motocross, BMX. I'm used to the handbrake. I never have liked a foot brake. So the guys that we ride with, we like the better control of having the rear brake on the hand. So here's how we do it. This is a custom one-off here you're not going to be able to buy because it's just done by a local buddy here, and he doesn't sell them. Do you see the two levers? I gotta move this bike around. It's way too dark. Let's get some light on this here. I'm showing this just so you know what options there are that you can set up however you want to, whatever you're used to. But the controls are very important because the controls are how you interface with the machine. All right, here we go. So, how my controls are set up, I have a 2-lever system. These are Midwest Industries handles. These are an improvement. They pull harder than the OEM ones, and they're shorter. And so what I have done is I've gotten rid of I've added 2 clutch master cylinders here. These are KTM clutch master cylinders. These are brake master cylinders. You see how much taller this one is with the sight glass and how low profile these are? Normally, the clutch, this would be the only thing over on here. By adding this, my buddy who had these built, he designed all of this double perch here gives us the ability to run 2 clutch master cylinders. This one, the red one, is now being used as a brake. So my rear brake is right here, and my clutch is right here. I operate these together with 2 fingers. That's how I've learned to ride. That way I can clutch and brake and have really good control, especially when I'm up on the side of a cliff on an exposed hard enduro type of ride where there's no room for mistake, or I really need to be finesseful with the brake. I find it to be very helpful, and I prefer it. I love this. I love this setup right here. So that's how we did it. What else do I have here? So this is KTM. One thing that I did was I was having a lot of problems with vibration. 2-strokes are notoriously, they vibrate a lot, and my hands were going numb. Now, a lot of that had to do with me gripping too much. When I was learning, I was actually gripping the handlebars and not gripping the bike with my body, and I would pump my arms out, and the vibration was making my hands go to sleep. So my initial solution was this. These are flex bars. I've got nothing bad to say about these. I've ridden them for years and they've been excellent. What this does is that the vibration that comes up through the bike into the bars, this is directly clamped right to the triple clamp, goes into your hands all day long. And all of the impacts that the suspension doesn't soak up, that also comes into your hand. It just fatigues you. And us guys that are older, that becomes a problem. So I put these on, and what this does is that these are elastometers here. So these have a little bit of cushion, up and down, on the compression and the rebound. A noticeable difference immediately. I was able to, my hands, I had no more problems with my hands after putting these on, and I've rode these a long time. I also had these bars filled with solid heavy brass. There's it's heavy, thick brass in here about so far. Both sides threaded. The reason for that, it's mass. That vibration is tamped down when it has to deal with trying to vibrate that whole mass. So these were great, but the downside, obviously, they're expensive and they're heavy. Having all that weight up top is bad. You really notice it. So the solution that I went to this year is a better solution, is the Mako 360. Mako 360 mount, rather than just isolating on two planes, has a 360 degree, you see that orange in there? That's a dampener. That dampener, there's no metal touching the bar. It's completely suspended and isolated by those dampeners on a very clever system. This is made by 360. It's a 360 Mako, and it's a beautiful piece of engineering. And if you were over 40 or 50, that's the first thing I put on my bike. It makes that much difference. It's tremendous. If you're going to be dual sporting, you also need to have a good, I use my phone. Navigating with the phone is everything. I use the Gaia app. So I want this right here where I can interact with it. I can touch it, I can read it. And the iPhones are excellent because the screens are so bright you can see them in direct sunlight. And then critical gauges. I'm actually going to be building, I'm not happy with this dash setup that I have. I have it kind of just temporary here with my critical gauges. I'm going to be building a special carbon fiber dash. I'll show you. Actually, I just got it. I've never worked with carbon fiber before. This is the first piece I've ever bought. But I bought this piece here. And this is, we're going to make a dash out of this. And I'll do a video on this here. It's thick. It's probably more than 1/4 inch. Or pretty close to 1/4 inch. Boy, it's stiff. It's got a nice finish on it too. I was gonna pull that cover off there and show you. It was quite lovely. Yeah, my Husky is, there it is. Look at that. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? So I know exactly what I'm going to do with that. So we'll do that in a future video. Yeah, my Husky's street legal. Well, enough. I have a plate under here, but I keep the plate covered under a piece of inner tube. I don't know that anyone needs. I don't need any trail cams picking up my plate. Controls, grips. I guess we have all that. KTM covers that. Suspension, exactly. Okay. Another thing. If you're really remote and gas is important, you don't want to lose gas. I've seen guys dump bikes over and lose a bunch of gas and then have a problem, not have enough to get back. So one thing you can do, these are designed, these open systems. The older bikes with carburetors are going to need to have a vent on your cap. New bikes that have fuel injected have closed fuel systems. They do not need this. But when you dump your bike over, it's all going to leak out of there. So this is a check valve. So this is a really good thing to have if you're dumping your bike over. A one-way valve that lets air go in but will not let gas go out, so you'll never lose it. Seat, as I was saying, the factory seats are brutal, terrible, narrow, uncomfortable. They will absolutely bust your butt. The best seat out there is the Seat Concepts, and I like the low. So this is more of a comfort seat. Still looks good, still very performance-oriented, narrow up front where you ride, but in those long rides when you have a sore butt, or if you're going to be on it for a while, you can scoot back and you get that wide platform. So a seat is really important. Grabbers or tuggers, front and rear, are really important if you're going to be doing gnarly stuff off-road, to be able to have guys help you and pull you. I keep one back here for lifting the back of the bike, as well as the front, right there, for helping. And guys, your buddies will come up and we'll throw. When I go up on Fuji, I keep the webbing and my saw on here, all tied in, so guys can grab it and we can pull bikes back up if we drop them up over edges. Extended tank, big tank, almost 2.5 gallons or so. Electric fan, that doesn't come on bikes. Electric fans are really important because those will come on and keep your bike cool. High compression head, I've got a lot of engine work done on this. We don't need to go into it. Performance exhaust. Recluse clutch, an auto clutch. Guys always talk a lot of trash about that. I don't care. It is a tremendous advantage and it makes riding so much more enjoyable. If you haven't gone up on dirt bikes or have struggled with clutch control, this is the ultimate cheat code right here. You'll never kill it. You'll never stall it. You'll be able to ride and get up stuff that you would never got up before in your life I'm a fan. I've had them. I've been riding them for 20 years. I put them on my snow bikes. I put them on everything. I mean, I guarantee you, anything that I ride is going to have. Well, you can't see it. It's going to have my 450 has the same thing, same clutch, CX. Highly recommend. I absolutely love it. Adjustable power valve, skid plate, you want to improve upon that. I have custom suspension on this. Protection for your linkage. I was telling you the difference of KTM and Husqvarna. Not all, there are models that have back and forth, but a better or a plusher suspension, a linkage. Rear disc guards. That's something that's really, really critical. You want to make sure you protect that. That disc gets damaged, it's down in the rocks and in the dirt, and that will get damaged, so you want to upgrade that or put a guard on that, so anything that hits that will protect that expensive disc. Some of the stuff was so gnarly that I was burning up or overheating the brakes, spoiling the brakes, so I needed a little bit better braking. I went with a solid rear disc instead of vented. You'll see most bikes will have vented discs, like the Honda here. That's for cooling, lightweight, but one problem is there's less mass, and so it heats up quicker, actually, if you're under hard use. But one huge problem is if you're in mud, these fill up with mud, and if it's really wet and sticky, now the calipers can't squeeze and you have diminished braking because that mud is pushing back. You can't compress water if there's a lot of water in it. And so guys that are in that environment will often, and racers will always run a solid disc brake. More surface area to grab, and you're not going to have that problem with the mud. I have, this is the factory exhaust I just put back on because I have a turbo core FMF, but it was so clogged up that it was basically a straight pipe, and my buddies were all complaining about how loud it was. So I've got it soaking in a solvent tank to try to clean out some of those ports. And in the meantime, I've got the factory exhaust back on there. All right, let's flip over the other side. We'll go over that quickly, and then we'll go over the Honda and how that turned out. Be taking Candy out for an epic ride tomorrow, I'm hoping. So I forget what side my kickstand's on. Okay, on the right side, tie-down straps. These are Canyon Dancers. If you're going to be transporting your bike, and if you are running any type of a suspended or suspension bar, like the Mako 360 here, and I run risers. Get it up there a little bit more comfortable. You have to tie down here. You can't tie down on the bars like you're used to, because that puts a lot of compression on those elastometers that are in there, and you can't do it. So this is a great option. You can just tie down right directly off of here. Brembo's brakes, full wrap covers. I have a Chirby's, just a left side cover on this because I have a high speed adjustment down here, a valve that I want to protect. And this is not a super skookum guard or anything, but it doesn't need to be. It's a delicate valve down there that I adjust for different situations, and I want to protect it. So I have that at Chirby's on there just for that one reason. One thing you must have, Overton, I'm speaking to you. No, Overton, doesn't apply to you. If your bike has radiators, you have to have radiator guards. These are aluminum. They're up front and they're vulnerable. When the bike falls down, this is what hits, and these crush, and they're expensive. You have to have good radiator guards to protect those, and these are the best. I think these are the bulletproof. I wire extra tools on there. That's my combi tool for my axle and spark plug, and over here an extra shift lever and tire bars. I don't want weight on me. I want it to be light. I want my pack to be light. So that's what those are for. Also, I've taken out the factory bolts that hold this on, and I've used kickstand rubbers so that I can quickly take this off. Normally they bolt in right there because I take this off when I wash it, and that's an option. They drilled and tapped these covers for that reason, so that's a really good option. Okay, what else do we have here? Oh, I lost my chat. Down here, we have electron carburetor. The best upgrade I did to the bike was probably this carburetor. The factory one was a horror show. You had to fool with jetting, didn't run properly. These electron carburetors have been around for a long time. This is the new Billetron, and it is fabulous. It automatically adjusts. You don't have to rejet for any situation. You can run this from sea level up to 14,000 feet without touching it. My fuel economy improved by probably 30%, and I'm getting about 120 miles out of this tank, which is pretty amazing. And that is a fabulous carburetor. Gearing, as I said, I run a 14 on the street for the front, and I run a 12 when I'm doing hard enduro. Special armor on the, this is the, I forget what they call it, adjuster there for the recluse. This is a vulnerable spot because as this will bring dirt, rocks, sticks, and if it gets wedged in there, it'll break that, crack that out, and now you don't have a clutch. It's all sorts of problems. So this is an armored piece on there with an extra bar that ties into the frame that gives it much more rigidity and strength. Also found that the factory shifters are not very skookum, fragile, lightweight, and they break. So all my bikes I replace with hammerhead forged shifter, which are far, far superior. Far, far superior. Frame guards are factory. Pegs, critical. These are my favorite. These are made by Fastway, and if you're a tall, these are very clever. They're a lot bigger than the factory ones, and it makes a big difference when you're on them all day. These, you feel very planted when you have these, very stable. If you contrast these with little factory pegs, they can't, I mean, they can't compare. They're tiny, and they're not sharp, and they're awful. One of the first things I would do would change that. Also with the Fastway pegs, and these are all stainless steel, so they're super tough. You can run them in the normal position, or you can run them in a lower position. Now, I'm 6'4", that makes a big difference. Every little bit I can pick up makes me a lot more comfortable on the bike, so I run these in the low position and further back. And it's the way they're made. You just flip this bushing, and you can run them either way. But I have these on Jack's bikes, my bike. I'll probably put these on Mrs. W's bike. I love those. Big, big fan of the Fastway pegs. O-ring chain. Hey, Mama. Upgraded O-ring chain is better than a non-O-ring. Your bike is probably not going to come with an O-ring. A lot less maintenance, quieter. You might lose a tiny bit of power, but just the convenience of it is far superior. What an O-ring chain is in between the links and here is an O-ring. You can see those, and that keeps the grease inside. So you don't have to lubricate an O-ring chain. I don't care what anyone tells you. The only reason you would really lubricate it is to keep it from corroding. Upgraded sliders, tougher. Also, one thing that I upgrade is that KTMs are vulnerable to break off these tabs that hold the chain slider. So this is a piece made by Bulletproof Design, I believe, that bolts in. You have to do a little bit of tapping, bolts into the swing arm, and just reinforces that and get a nice attack angle. Because on the other side is that disc guard, and here you've got the chain guard, and that's in the rocks getting hit. So this needs to be pretty tough. I run all steel. I think it's Dirt Tricks sprockets, the best sprockets in the world, in my opinion, will outlast the bike. They're not aluminum, they're steel, and they're tough and very, very good with titanium bolts. And also tubeless on the rear. Oh, lost my why. Factory light in the back. That's basically, I mean, there's a whole bunch of subtle small things. We go on for hours about this, but that's pretty much the gist of it. So for the Honda, I got a couple days working on this. I just got it back together. It's 100%. Boy, what a nice machine. I took, it was all black. Yeah, Jay likes the CR better. It's okay, man. It's just personal preference. Two different, completely different machines. This is CRF 250. Both of these are 2018, both carbureted. This is the Honda, but pretty much bone stock apart from a couple things. I put the desert tank on it. The CRF 250L is a good bike. What it is it's a dirt bike chassis, forks and everything, geometry, but it's got a street bike engine in it. So this is a beautiful little 250 from the CBs. We like the little CB road bikes. But nice little package, nice engine. Not fast, about 23 horsepower. You know, less than half the horsepower of this one. 100 pounds heavier than this one. You know, this one's right at 210 pounds, which is incredibly light. This one's closer to 300. But it's a different machine. You know, it's more road. This is a true 50-50, road and off-road. So I took off all the black. The only damage I found was there was a little bit right here. So I've ordered this morning a new radiator cover and decal, so that will take care of that. I took off the factory tank and put on the big desert tank, so that's going to give us a whole lot more range. And it looks pretty good on there. I like clear tanks. I like to be able to see my fuel level. Since Mrs. W is going to be riding this, this is the OEM seat, and it's got a tear on the other side and some staining here I'm not able to get out. I've got a new seat coming that is a factory seat, but I found a company in Oregon that shaves the foam down and puts the cover back on. It looks just like original, but it's very low profile. It actually improves the look of the bike significantly. So we're going to take 2 inches out of the seat. That's going to give her flat feet, or she'll be able to touch now, where she can't now. This particular bike has a really high seat height compared to some of the other bikes. I don't know why. It's too high, in my opinion, for a beginner. I like it. I can sit flat-footed on it now, but it's not for me. All this factory exhaust. Someone did a tidy tail on it. You've seen motorcycles, you know, especially the Hondas, the way that they have the huge plate that comes down. No one likes that. So there's companies that make what they call a tidy tail, which just brings everything up, gets it much more confined, uses the original blinkers and such, but that looks a whole lot better. And someone's added quite a nice rack. Uses the factory mounts on there. And for this type of bike, you know, I could see putting a bag on there or even a milk crate on the back, you know, if you wanted to, but it's a good option. But all OEM, original. Whoever upgraded this did it right. They bought good quality items. This is a good item. Also, they upgraded the handlebars to Pro Tapers, so aluminum handlebars instead of the steel that come with it. I ordered new grips. I think you should have new grips on your bike. You have to remember, gentlemen, that these, you know, let's say 50, 60 horsepower, let's say 50 horsepower and 25 horsepower. You know, that's a lot of horsepower. And when you're on this thing and you're standing on the pegs, you know, where are your points of contact? You're either standing on the pegs or you're touching the grips, right? It needs to be good. It needs to be a good point of contact, because that's how you control the machine. If you're taking a 50 horsepower angry machine like this that's so powerful and so fast over rough, uneven ground, you need to be connected to it. So your seat, your pegs, and your controls are really important to me. I keep them sharp and new, and I'll swap out grips twice a year. I want new, sticky, clean grips, and these are my favorite grips, the ORIs, the diamond patterns. Those points of contact are important. It's important to have everything set up so it's comfortable, so that your levers are properly positioned, you know, when you're standing or sitting. You know, those things make a big difference. They're important and not to be overlooked. I'll probably, things that I'll change that haven't been changed already, I'll probably get rid of these and put a more off-road version more durable mirror. These will be gone and broken the first time it goes down. I'll lower the seat. There's the damage I told you about. So that's just temporarily on here. The new seat will show up. And also, as we said, someone's put about $1,000 rear suspension shock on it. Olin's remote resi. That's really a nice, I would not have done that. I did it on my 300, but I would not have done it on a bike like this. They've also upgraded the shifter. I don't know if this is a good one or just a cheapo one. A lot of that stuff is junk. That's about it. This is 2-passenger, so you can put a buddy on this. These are OEM buddy pegs. One was missing, so I ordered the other side. You had to order 2. They come in pairs. And just a handful of little fasteners and things like that were missing. One thing that was missing here was this piece right here. That clip, it's just one of those little automotive style clips there. So I got that ordered. I just went over every single piece, every nut and bolt, and made a list, and then got everything ordered up. But that is the 250, essentially. Oh goodness, I missed a super chat from Prognostic. Never apologize. Great to be in good company. Thank you, brother. I sure do appreciate that. Thank you so much for your generosity. Oh, I know this is not everyone's thing, guys. I'm really into it. If you haven't noticed, I love talking about it. Come on, Mom. Let's get our chair. Let's get our chair. It's Friday, and you know what that means. Mama Kitty needs to get a little bit more love here. Come here. Come on. Don't bite me. Don't bite me. Okay, I got you. All right. So before we go, gentlemen, do you have any moto questions? Are you in the market? Are you looking at something? Are you going to go maybe pick something up or look at something this weekend? I'd like to know. Let the group know what you're deciding on. We have a super chat from Sparky who writes, I still use a 1940 8N Ford tractor. I used to run one of those. I had a job. My granddad, I told you, was a mechanic for Ford. He worked for 2 different dealerships, and he retired probably sometime in the 80s or so. Don't bite me. This is not a tame cat. Well, he retired a couple months and couldn't hardly stand it, and it just went back to work. He was from that generation. He went back to work with one of his hunting buddies who owned a company that did the portable toilets. They pump septic tanks, and they would, the little plastic toilets that they have at events. He had a couple thousand of those things, and so he would take them all over the place. Had a pretty good sized business, 20 employees or so. And my granddad went to work for him as a mechanic because they had a huge fleet. They probably had a dozen trucks or so, and my granddad just went back into working on those. So he got me a job as a summer job when I was in high school, working there, cleaning those toilets. So when they would come in from events, then we would, clean them and pressure wash. And sometimes I'd go out and pump septic tanks, just whatever needed doing. But in the yard, we had one of those old Ford, 1940s Ford 8N tractors with forks on it. And that's what we drove around in the yard and lifted those portable toilets with. Yeah, I'm real familiar with those tractors. Man, that's gasoline. That's a great old tractor. You see them still going around today. I mean, you can't hardly go out in the country without seeing an old Ford 8N that's probably still running. Thank you, Prognostic. Generous. That was a very generous super chat, brother. I sure do appreciate that. XR400, yeah, the XR4, those are wonderful bikes. I love those XR400s. Sadly, no longer made. My neighbor and buddy Brian, he's got an XR250 he's taken that to Canada with me twice as well, and rides all of the hard stuff. One thing that we did do is we put tubeless on it. He was not able to hang and compete with us on the newer bikes on some of the harder stuff, and he doesn't have electric start, and that's a problem. But we put tubeless just on the rear, and a good gummy tire, a Shinko. I forget what it was, 505 or something. Soft gummy trials type of tire, and that changed his life. He was able to go pretty much everywhere with that. That's the single biggest advantage a guy can put on a bike is a tubeless system where you can run it down 3-4 psi and a big old huge gummy soft compound tire. Essentially what you end up with when I've even run them with no pressure at all on really hard stuff. What you end up with is a big old rubber track in the back. And that rubber track, when you put that on that 300 like this with tubeless and a competition gummy tire, gives you supernatural powers. If you were to take a guy, I don't care if it was a 450R, brand new 2023 top of the line Honda race bike. If you were to bring that bike up where we go in its factory trim, without the tubeless, without modifications and things I showed you, you would have a very unhappy rider, if he could even make it at all. Mr. Kyle B writes, what bike would you recommend to pair with the overland vehicle? I would have to be able to get it inside and up on a rack. Something lightweight. Probably, so I talked to a Honda guy, dealer yesterday, and he told me that the most popular bike that they're selling right now is the Honda 250. It's not an L, I think it's like an H. It's like Mrs. W's bike here, but more dirt bike oriented. I don't know if it's dual sported. You know, you don't need to dual sport these things, man. I mean, I don't, well, I can't tell you. I can't publicly tell you how to get license plates. I know how to get license plates on pretty much any motorcycle. If you live in California, you know, that's not going to be possible, but there are other, I can't get into it, I get in trouble. But I would look at something like a 250 size bike, either a Kawasaki or a Yamaha or the Honda. But if you go on the Honda website, they have two 250s. They have the L. I wouldn't recommend that, it's too heavy. Then they have one that's like the H or something. Maybe it's the H. It's more a friendly trail bike, not a high-strung racing bike. I would look at something like that. But I mean, if you want something really small and light and a bike that we just love to death, the little Kawasaki 140. It's a more of a kid's bike, but it has full-size wheels. It's a big wheel. And Honda makes one now as well, a 150, I believe, with the big wheels on it. Yes, they're kids' bikes oriented for kids, but I'll tell you, I put lots of adults on them, and every one of them has a great time. Electric start, decent suspension, good brakes, nice seat, really great first gear. I would look, if you want something that's cheap, you know, you'd be able to buy these things for probably $2,000 or maybe less. Yeah, probably right around $2,000. The big wheel Honda 150 and the big wheel Kawasaki 140. Kids bikes, yes, cheap, small, lightweight. You could put it anywhere. I would not turn my nose up at it. I wouldn't care what anyone would think. If I just wanted something that was just an emergency type of vehicle, that'd be great. Shout out to you, Kyle B. Good to see you back. And Xavier Goslin's back. He says, my next bike would be a Suzuki RM450. The bike, as a kickstart, electric start, my buddy has one with over 400 hours on it. Yeah. I don't know much about those Suzukis, but they've always made a good bike. Whatever you like, man. There aren't any rules with this. KTM, Husqvarna, Gas. Get something that's got a good dealer where you can get parts. Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, they're all going to be good bikes. I would not probably recommend the Chinese bikes that are coming on the market now. They're really tempting because they're half the price. The quality's just not there yet. But with that being said, if you don't have $4 or $5 grand to drop on a bike and you can get into one of these Chinese bikes and you don't know if you're going to like the sport or not, there's no harm in that, especially if you buy it used. Buy it used, you probably get something for $1,000. Go tear it up, ride it. If you like it, if you're getting into it, sell it, and then get into a proper bike. In my opinion, the best that there is, if you want the very best, I'll probably stick with Honda or KTM. Just understand with KTM, you're getting a thoroughbred. You're getting a machine that's going to have high service intervals, meaning I change the oil on this bike on my 300 every 8 hours. which is about every other ride, sometimes every ride. Transmission oil. The Honda, that's once a year. You're not even going to touch that thing. Air filter, once a year. Oil, once a year. Everything once a year. Where the KTM, every ride. New filter every ride, new air filter, new oil every ride or every other ride. There's just a lot more to it, but you're also at the very pinnacle of performance. This is what I can do on this 300 compared to what I could do on that 250. I mean, I'm not taking that anywhere near Mount Fuji. I mean, maybe on a smooth single track that is flat and no problems, but this is they're just different machines. I have pushed this into the role that it was never intended to be, which is being able to do road miles with it. And I've done that by gearing, wheel set, just a few other things, but I don't care. You get something that you like, you just like it. I can go and get a road bike. I could get something different. I don't, because I love this bike. I've had every single bolt out of it multiple times. I know how it works. I know how to fix it. It's simple. I trust it. It's never let me down. It absolutely gives me the fizz like almost nothing else I own. I just absolutely love it. Four Doors has a question. Have you seen an Aprilia RVX 550? I have 8 of them. I have seen one. I've only seen one. This was the experience with the Aprilia. So it was last year. I think this was the same bike. I got a call from the ranger station. There's a guy up on a hiking trail that has got his bike over the edge, over an embankment, and he can't get the bike up and he's stranded. Can you go help him? Jack and I found out where he was at, found him, and helped him get that gigantic bike back on the machine. And it took all 3 of us and ropes and all this stuff. So my problem, Aprilias are cool. Don't get me wrong. The whole thing, it's cool to have something that not everyone has. I'm all about that. If you want to do that, I get that. But they're a little bit more exotic. Parts are going to be a problem, and they're just exotic. They're not, I don't know that it's for me. If you've got 8 of them, you know all about it. That's your thing, and I have nothing to say about it. And if something gives a man the fizz, then it's off the table. You can't give him a hard time about it. You may not agree. It doesn't make any difference. If it gives him the fizz, then he has every right with his resources, with his money, to spend it on what he likes. And if you like Aprilia 550s, then more power to you. I myself don't know anything about them other than they're heavy. And they have a lot of plastic on them that I think is expensive to fix if you break them. Yeah, S. Cooper, you remember that video. I think that, it was an Aprilia. I don't know what model it was, but I'm guessing it was probably something like that. Different bike. This one is a V-twin Enduro. No, I guess I don't know, Four-door. I don't even have an opinion on that. The only Aprilia that I ever came across was that one, and I don't even remember what it was. I just assumed it was somewhere. It looked like a 650 size or something to that effect. Now, there is no big enduro bikes. I don't care what the manufacturer says. If we're talking about a big unless we're talking about a 650 XRL, the Honda. Now that is a true enduro bike, in my opinion. I'd have to look at the Aprilia. Again, I can't talk about it. I'm talking about something I know nothing about. I don't even know what it looks like. But I'll look it up and see. But the fact that I've never heard of it or never seen one makes me a little bit concerned that would not be something that would be appropriate for what we're talking about here. Stick to what's normal. What Proho wants when we're looking at dual sport motos is we want the G19 of dirt bikes. Want something that everyone's familiar with, that's not exotic, you're gonna be able to get parts anywhere. Any mechanic is gonna know how to work on it. It's nothing strange. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Just stick with what, guys that are better riders and smarter than us have figured out what vehicles are best for this role. And it really has come down to a couple. The XR650L, the DRZ 400, maybe the KLR, if you want to go really big and long range stuff, that has a place as well. Or possibly, the 250L, the 450L. you know, those type of bikes. I'm not leaving out Yamaha and Suzuki because I don't like them or they don't have a model. It's just I'm not familiar with them. It's not what I'm into. So Duster 16 is firing off his 308 this morning, and that gives him the fizz. And indeed it should. Yeah, shout out to you, brother. Goodness. All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you for hanging out with me. Don't forget, it's Friday, and that means that the Sabbath is coming up this evening. Sabbath starts at sunset. The true Christian Sabbath, sunset Friday evening, the seventh day of the week, which is Saturday, to sunset tomorrow. I encourage you to look into it. We will need to do a study on this, gentlemen. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of people that don't believe me, and have been sending scripture with an opposite opinion and view. I'm familiar with all this. I did a deep dive on this multiple times years ago when I was faced with the same problem. Which is the proper day of worship, and does it matter? I think we need to cover this, just like we did with the dietary laws. I think I'll brush up and make my case, and on a coming live stream, I think we need to broach this and come up with it. I need to give you biblical proof about this, not my think-so. Don't pay any attention to what my opinions are or my think-sos. Don't trust any man. We're only safe when we're on the ground, God's ground, and that's in the 66. I will make my argument, or make the argument for God, that the seventh-day Sabbath, the Saturday Sabbath, is something that's important that we keep. I think that next to the dietary laws, I think that's probably one of the more common things that comes up and something that we need to look into. We'll get right into the Word and find out what God says about it, and not what your pastor or me or our traditions, what they say about it. Jesus is the Sabbath. Yeah, essentially the Sabbath, that's basically, it's a type. The Sabbath is a type, just like the ark is a type of Christ. Why? What do you mean the ark is Christ? Well, the ark is Christ because the ark saved through the flood, through a tribulation. The people didn't save themselves, they were saved because they got on the boat. We are saved because we accept Christ. We get on the boat of Christ, right? And he's the one that has lived the perfect life. When God looks upon us in the judgment, on that great and terrible day, when we stand and give an account before God and man of our life and our decisions and what we did and how we reacted to the urging of God, we have a choice. Right now, you and I have a choice. By not following Christ, by not accepting the gift of salvation that comes from confessing and believing and following Him and the commandments, then you will pay the price for your sins. Because we're told the wages of sin is death. There needs to be death. There is always death. That's the result of it. Separation from God is death. That's an example. And either you pay that price yourself with your own eternal life and soul, or you acknowledge that you're unworthy of it, and you accept the free gift that God has offered you by letting His Son, who has already paid it for you, and you just get to go in for free. Essentially, I mean, when you think about it, of course there are obligations we have to do. We have to maintain the walk and stay connected to God and pray and confess our sins, and all the things that goes along with it. Do our best with the help of the Holy Spirit to keep the commandments. We have a job in this to do as well, but really the heavy lifting's already been done. It's the blessed assurance. All right. Cell towers are very iffy. Yeah, I am concerned about cell towers and 5G and these things the more I look into it. But what better way to have access to these things in the difficult times than, if need be, than a dirt bike? You should be knowing where they're at, where your critical infrastructure is in your area, and have that mapped out so that you can act accordingly to whatever needs to be done, whether you need to protect it or other. I missed a super chat. Goodness. I'm backing up here. Oh man, I'm not seeing it. I don't have it. Maybe it was from earlier. I apologize. If I missed a super chat. Oh, Overton put it up here I see it. Thank you, brother. Okay, here it is. I thought I answered all of these. What bike would I recommend to pair with an overland vehicle? I would have to be able to get it inside or up on a rack. Something light, like we said. A smaller bike or maybe even a two-stroke. The two-stroke bikes are pretty light. And Xavier, my next bike will be a Suzuki RM450. Yep, I thought we covered those. Yeah, well, if I missed one, I apologize. I'm sorry, gentlemen. There's a guy on YouTube called Dirt Bike Fab who deals exclusively with 500cc two-strokes. Yeah, I'm kind of nostalgic about those. The big CR500s and the Kawasaki, the KX500s. Those were a man's bikes, to say the least. Guys, if you grew up in the time that I grew up, you'll know about those bikes. And if you've ever been on one, oh goodness, the power band hit like a sledgehammer in the head. They were hard to even hang on to. They were absolutely ferocious machines. As powerful and awesome as this 300 two-stroke is, imagine almost 50% more power without all of the technology of evening out the power curve and the power valves and all that. Just straight raw power band where it's either off or it's on. Just thinking about riding those things back in the day and the experiences I had when I was younger still gives me the shivers. They are not for sissies. I think it would be super cool to have a bone stock OEM, like a 1983 CR500, all original. Oh man, I'd tear that, I'd ride that thing. I'm a better rider now, I'm more competent now. Not to say that I could tame one of those things. I mean, when it comes to being like a good motorcycle rider, you know, I'd probably put myself in like out of 10, maybe a 5. 4 on some days. You know, if I'm talking about a pro being the best, that's kind of where I fit. Somewhere probably in the middle. Competent, but cautious. But I would like to get on one of those. I wonder now, after having so many hours, especially on two-stroke, if it would be as ferocious as I remember it. You know, I hold it in pretty high regard. Oh, thank you, Overton. Goodness, I don't know how I missed that. The super chat I missed is from our friend Sparky, and Sparky writes this. He's fixing up a 1980 Suzuki RM100, having to deal with wheels and spokes since they're out of round. Working on the engine is easier for me. Yeah, I think that's cool. You know, again, I don't have a problem with those 80s bikes. I actually like the simplicity of it. I like just coil and carburetor and fuel, man. And they're so simple. You're not going to have electric start, but you're also not going to have the complication of the battery. And you know, every time you add these conveniences, they come at a cost of weight and complication. What we want, what our goal is simplicity. The very reason why I'm not riding a 2023 TE300 is because of that complexity. All sorts of problems those bikes are having. Very delicate, whole bunch of a lot extra weight too. Now they've got oil pumps, they've got fuel pumps, they've got map sensors. I mean, there's an extra like 30 pounds on those bikes that this bike doesn't have. It's just simple. I've stripped it down to its basic components. There's nothing on it that doesn't have a purpose. A really simplified basic wiring harness. It's essentially a race bike. I treat it and built it like a race bike with that quality and that attention to detail, but but it's a bike that I ride. It's my daily bike. It's also my hobby, too. This is not an example. You just go. This is my particular hobby here. Yeah, that's why I like the carbureted bikes as well. And when you put that Electron on, or like that new Bellatron carburetor, goodness, it is absolutely sweet as a nut. Goodness, so good, so good. All right, we're going to shut it down, gentlemen. Happy Sabbath is coming up. Get your family ready. Please keep us in your prayers. We pray for you guys constantly. Sure do appreciate all the super chats and participation and folks hanging out. Thank you, Overton and the middlemen, for moderating and helping out with everything. That doesn't go unnoticed. We are very grateful, and we're only able to do this because of you guys. So thank you so much for that. Get on Craigslist Marketplace. Start looking. It's a good time. Get yourself a good bike. Something dual sport or something with a plate on it that you can go out and ride. It'll change your life. I was telling Overton yesterday, the Sweet Loaf and I, almost every evening, she jumps on the seat and then we go out for a spin and go for a ride. It's just a wonderful thing. I used to do it with Jack and in your life, and just to be able to, one of the place I buy my parts from is in Colorado, Jeff Slavens. Slavens, Slavens, great company. I've bought all my parts from them for years. Customer service is above and beyond. Great people. They only carry stuff on their site that's quality. There's no junk. There's no garbage on there. I've never seen it. Everything I've seen has been vetted, tested. They ride. They're real riders. Jeff is an incredible mechanic. History, pedigree of working with factory teams. Just does a ton of videos. Almost everything that I've learned, I've had to be self-taught on this bike, and I learned it from either Jeff Slavin's videos, his YouTube videos, which are very good. I learned how to rebuild my top end from him. I've learned how to balance tires, how to set up suspension, 1,000 things I've learned from him. And another good site, if you're a KTM guy, is Tokyo Off-Road. I believe he's in Japan. Super great mechanic, a rider as well, and he does great video. He focuses kind of on the two-strokes. And those are two great resources. But Jeff Slavens, he talks about, he calls having a motorcycle throttle therapy. And if you've got a lot going on at home, family obligations, and you've got a stressful job like a lot of guys do, it's hard to get away from it. Even when you come home, you're often faced with a lot of unfinished projects, and it's hard to get peace, hard to get your mind clear, and just your own time to think, just clear your head up a little bit. Having a dual sport moto that's street legal, that you can just jump on and just go for a ride, and everyone can do this regardless of where you live. Just go for a ride and get some of that throttle therapy, where you ride just fast enough where it takes all of your attention, where you crowd out all of the cares and worries of this life. But just to have that for an hour or two in the evenings or on the weekends it's hard to put a price on that. It's good for your health. I think he's absolutely right when he talks about that. Get out there and get some of that throttle therapy. I think that's for professional homeowners like us. I think that's way better than any sort of counseling or self-help. Just get out there and do something, scare yourself a little bit. Don't go crazy, but if you're not doing something that's scaring you at least once a day, then you're not really living, the way I look at it. All right, gentlemen, thank you. I sure appreciate it. Happy Sabbath coming up, and we'll see you guys, Lord willing, we'll see you on Monday.